Okay, so get this. Our source for this deep dive is claiming there's something kind of sneaky going on with our screens.
Sneaky how?
Well, they're saying it could even be messing with our minds a little.
Oh, wow. That sounds a bit sci-fi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to this technology. It's called Pulse-Width Modulation.
PWM.
Yeah, PWM. And it's like in practically every single device we use.
Like smartphones and laptops and TVs.
Yeah, all of that.
Uh,
So PWM, it's basically a way to control the brightness on screens.
yeah. It's actually pretty clever how it works.
How?
Well, it uses this rapid flickering of the backlight.
Flickering.
Uh-huh.
But I don't see my screen flickering.
You don't see it at higher frequencies,
Okay.
but at lower frequencies, you can definitely notice it.
Interesting. So what's this got to do with our minds? Well, even if we can't see it,
Right.
our brains could still be picking up on that flicker.
Yeah, that's right.
Huh.
It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, it's a little unsettling. So by the way, our source for this,
Yeah.
they describe themselves as this IRL Twitch live streamer
Okay.
with an interest in technology
Yeah.
and the occult and strange.
So right off the bat, we're getting into some pretty intriguing territory. And you know what they've done is they've actually pulled together research
Right.
that suggests this PWM flicker could be linked to some things you wouldn't expect.
Like what?
Like eye strain, headaches,
Oh, yeah.
even feelings of dizziness or disorientation.
Really?
Yeah, now,
Hmm.
the scientific community, they're still kind of debating how widespread or severe these effects are.
Right.
But there's enough out there
Yeah.
to make us want to dig a little deeper.
Okay, so PWM, maybe not exactly harmless,
Right.
but mind control.
Yeah.
That's where I get skeptical.
Mind control, yeah.
Our source even brings up the movie They Live,
They live.
where they're like, you know, manipulating people with these subliminal messages
Messages and stuff. Yeah.
hidden in everyday things. I mean, come on. Is that really a realistic comparison?
Well, I think, let's not jump to conclusions.
Okay.
The idea that PWM could be intentionally used for something like subliminal messaging,
Yeah.
that's definitely a fringe idea.
Okay.
But what we can explore is whether constant exposure to this flicker,
Okay.
even if we don't consciously see it,
Right.
could have these subtle long-term effects on how our brains process information.
So less about like direct mind control.
Right.
More about the possibility that this is influencing us in ways that we don't fully understand.
Exactly. And to kind of grasp that possibility,
Okay.
it helps to understand how PWM actually works.
How does it work?
Okay, so imagine the backlight of your screen
Mm-hmm.
is like a light bulb that's constantly turning on and off really, really fast.
Wow.
And the longer it's on
Yeah.
during each cycle,
Uh-huh.
the brighter the screen appears.
Right.
And at these higher frequencies, it's basically invisible to us.
Uh.
But our brains, that's another story.
So that's why our source is so concerned.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got iPhones, iPads, Galaxy phones, Pixels,
All of them.
all of them. They all use PWM.
It's a lot of potential exposure,
Yeah.
even if it is mostly invisible.
And you're saying our brains are super sensitive to light and patterns?
Incredibly sensitive.
Right.
And there's a growing body of research
Yeah.
looking into how different frequencies of light can actually trigger certain brainwave activity.
Wow.
So we're a long way from proving that this can be used to
Yeah.
manipulate thoughts or behavior,
Right.
but it's not totally far-fetched to think that it could be subtly affecting our mood, our focus,
Mhm.
maybe even our sleep patterns.
So there's at least some basis scientifically for thinking about PWM's effects beyond just eye strain and headaches.
Absolutely.
And this is where someone like Nikola Tesla gets brought into this.
Yeah, Tesla was fascinated by frequencies,
Totally.
the power of them.
He believed that frequencies and vibrations could seriously impact human health and consciousness.
Yeah.
And while some of his ideas, they were definitely ahead of their time,
Mm-hmm.
modern science is starting to catch up.
It is.
Okay, so maybe Tesla was onto something.
Yeah.
But before we go too far down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories,
Right.
let's talk about what we can actually do
What can we do?
if we're concerned about this.
That's a good question.
Right.
Our source offers some practical advice.
Okay, good.
I think it's worth considering.
Definitely. Okay, so solutions. What can we actually do about this whole PWM thing? I mean, we can't just ditch our phones and computers, right?
Well, true, but you can be a smarter user about it.
Okay. Good
Our
point.
source recommends first you got to know which devices use PWM.
Okay.
Do a little research. I mean, there's tons of stuff online.
Resources and lists and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like specific models,
Okay.
their display technologies, all that.
So knowledge is power in this case.
Yeah.
Okay, but what about like devices we already have?
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do to minimize like the effects?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
They recommend playing around with your screen settings.
Hmm.
Some people, they actually find keeping the brightness all the way up.
At 100%.
100%, yeah. It can actually reduce how much you see the flicker.
Oh, really?
Yeah, although it might drain your battery life a little faster.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it's worth trying out. See what feels best for you.
Okay.
They also mention DC dimming.
DC dimming.
Yeah, as a possible alternative to PWM.
Okay, I've never heard of that. What is it?
So DC dimming is another way to control the brightness.
Okay.
But instead of that rapid flickering of the backlight, it actually adjusts the direct current flowing through it.
Mm.
So you get a much steadier light source.
Okay.
And it completely eliminates that flicker.
So does that mean there are devices out there that use DC dimming?
Yeah. Some older devices used it. And a few of the newer models are starting to bring it back.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you're really sensitive to flicker,
Yeah.
it might be worth trying to find those.
Okay, so we can research the devices, tweak our settings, maybe look for these DC dimming alternatives. Anything else?
You know, sometimes the best solutions are the simplest.
Okay.
And they really emphasize this. Take breaks.
Yeah.
Get away from the screens.
And give your eyes a rest.
Your brain a rest
Boy.
from all that stimulation.
It's true. I mean, we probably all need to unplug a little more.
Yeah.
Whether we're worried about PWM or not. Like, our brains didn't really evolve to just stare at screens all day long.
Exactly. And your brain is always working,
Yeah.
processing information, even when you don't realize it.
That's true.
Taking breaks lets it reset, recharge.
Yeah.
Reduces the chance of getting overloaded or like negative effects from things like PWM.
This is really making me think about like the bigger picture here.
Yep.
We're just surrounded by all this technology.
We are.
And it's constantly changing, evolving.
All the time.
It's easy to get caught up in like the excitement of the new gadgets and stuff.
Yeah.
But maybe we need to think more about like the downsides too.
It's true. I think that's super important.
Yeah.
Technology, it's got all these benefits, incredible benefits, but it's not without risks.
Definitely not.
And we often just embrace the new stuff without really understanding the long-term implications.
It's true, yeah. It's like we're in this giant experiment.
That's a great way to put it.
And we're the subjects and the researchers all at the same time.
Exactly.
But I mean, isn't that kind of what makes this so fascinating?
It is, yeah.
Exploring all this stuff that we're just starting to figure out.
The fringes of what we know.
Yeah.
Trying to separate what's real from what's speculation.
And how to deal with a world where the rules are always changing.
Right. And it's good to be skeptical about these things.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't just dismiss them because they sound a little out there.
Right.
Like Tesla. His ideas about frequencies,
Oh, yeah.
those were considered fringe once.
Yeah, totally.
But now mainstream science is taking them seriously.
Okay, so we need to be critical thinkers, but also open-minded.
Exactly.
But let's circle back to this whole They Live thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great movie, but is there really any evidence that PWM could be used for something like, subliminal messages or mind control?
Well, that's where it gets a little less clear.
Okay.
To be fair to our source, they're not saying it definitely is being used that way.
Well,
they're more just bringing it up as a question,
Yeah.
a possibility to think about.
Okay.
But it's definitely a possibility that we should be looking at critically, not just accepting it.
So how do we do that? How do we know what to believe?
I think the key is evidence.
Okay.
Or the lack of evidence.
Right.
We have to demand scientific rigor. Avoid all that hype and sensationalism. We have to be careful about the information we consume.
Yeah.
Especially these days, with misinformation everywhere.
It's true. So critical thinking is more important than ever.
Absolutely.
Question our assumptions, look at our sources, find evidence-based conclusions.
Those are the tools we need
Yeah.
to make good choices about the tech we use, how it affects our lives.
And that's really what this whole deep dive is about, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so we might not have all the answers,
Maybe not yet.
but at least we're asking the right questions.
The important questions.
Yeah. And speaking of questions, our source leaves us with a final one.
The final question.
It's a good one. It makes you think. What other subtle ways might technology be affecting us that we don't even realize?
That is a great question.
Right.
It's one we all need to be asking ourselves as we navigate this world that just keeps getting more and more tech-driven.
Yeah, for sure. It is kind of creepy to think about, that there might be these things, these ways technology is getting to us.
Yeah, it's like the hidden cost of all the cool stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. We give you these amazing devices and they make life so much easier, but...
But then there's the stuff we don't always see right away.
Exactly.
And with PWM, even if it's not like full-on mind control, which, let's be real,
Yeah.
there's still enough to say, hey, this flicker could be doing something.
To our health, to how we feel.
Exactly. So it's not just people being afraid of technology or anything.
Right. There are real reasons to pay attention to how we're using all this stuff.
Absolutely. It's like anything else, too much of a good thing.
So all those things we talked about, they actually matter.
They do, like actually taking the time to learn about PWM,
Yeah.
messing around with your screen settings, seeing if that helps.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you can, getting a device with DC dimming, that makes a difference.
Yeah.
But honestly, one of the biggest things, taking those breaks, getting away from the screens, it all adds up.
I guess a good rule is, enjoy all the cool tech, but don't just assume it's all good.
Yeah, be smart about it.
Stay curious, keep learning, and don't be afraid to ask the questions.
Even the weird ones.
Exactly, the ones that seem kind of out there.
Because sometimes those lead to the most interesting discoveries. This whole deep dive, it really shows how much we need to pay attention.
To the little things, the stuff that's happening under the surface.
Yeah, it's about being aware, thinking critically about how tech affects us, not just throwing it all away, but
using it in a way that works for us, not against us.
Right, and remembering we have choices.
We do, like what we use, how we use it, when we take a break. We're not powerless.
Exactly, and we can be part of pushing for tech that actually puts our well-being first.
That's a good point.
Like our source said, there's always more to learn. Who knows what else is out there waiting for us to find it?
I guess that's part of the adventure, right?
It is, the constant exploration.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for hanging out with us while we explored PWM and all the what-ifs that come with it.
Yeah, hopefully this gave you some things to think about and maybe some ideas for how to handle all the digital stuff in a way that keeps you feeling good.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing, keep asking those questions, and keep on diving deep.